welcome to everyone who's joining in the process of welcome. Today, I will be the moderator of our workshop. So my role is mostly to help you if you have questions, that you can get them answered throughout the time that we have together. There will be a discussion moment in the workshop 3 different times. So if you have a question during the content, please just put it in the chat. That way we can come back to it. Also, if you have questions related to the speed of the speaker or something else, just put it in the chat and I'm there to answer. As well, I'm from an NGO myself, so I'm here to learn some things alongside all of you. And I hope that you enjoy. I'll be introducing now our workshop host, Gabriel, who's going to be leading us to learn about AI without the hype. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Julia, and thank you, Grace, for introducing this workshop. So today I'm the host of the workshop. I'm Gabriel Wang. I'm the AI Solution Architect at AI for NGO. And I think some of you have seen me a couple of times, and I'm very happy to be able to speak and share again today. I have the background in data science and machine learning, and but then I also discovered that I'm very passionate about current policy and governance around this very crucial technology that we have. And I also like to, share cool things and my thoughts with the people. So super happy to have this place or the space to engage with everybody. So where I already wrote here that sometimes I can speak a bit too fast. You can always let me know in the chat. Grace will help moderate this. We have 3 open question and answer sections because we have 3 content session, and afterwards I strongly encourage you to participate in this so that we can share our learnings and also solve some of the questions. And we also designed some small quizzes in the Zoom that Grace will launch during the workshop, and you can participate so that we can validate your learning throughout this whole process. And so a little bit about why this workshop and why now. And first, I think it's really important, especially for NGO, to take a very realistic view, because right now generative AI is everywhere. And it's really difficult to know what is real or hype. And I think like for NGOs, we want to be very responsible, and we also don't want to waste any time or resources on this. And so let's just get to what's actually helpful. And I also want to use this opportunity as a practical starting point for everybody. And so we can find out what AI can actually do for us starting from today. And lastly, this is the second step, which means the second workshop for our AI literacy program that we're currently building. And the goal is to create a strong knowledge foundation for you, so that because this tool and technology is evolving extremely fast, but as fast as it goes, if we have a clear understanding on what it is, oftentimes we can adapt much better. So these are the goals for us. And what you will walk away with today. So first, we will have a practical understanding of particularly generative AI and its core capabilities. And second, we will talk a bit more about prompting techniques that help you to get the right output effectively or easier. And 3, we will have some realistic generative AI use cases for NGO workflows. And with a bonus, we have a toolkit of reviewed practical tools and resources. And later, Grace will also send you this in the chat. And so with that being said, we have 3 sections. Let's start with what is AI and what is capabilities. This is a little bit of a review of the first stepping stone AI crash course. So I will go through this a little bit faster. So AI is any system that simulates human intelligence and problem-solving skills, which is super broad. If you hear about things like generative AI or machine learning, these are all part of the so-called AI systems. And on the right side, there are a few things that I want you to check if you believe these are AI based on this definition. Grace will launch a quiz in Zoom if you want to participate there. Yeah, and also let us know if you cannot see it. So I will also read a little bit. So Google Photo auto tagging people in the photos is this AI, or Netflix recommendations based on your watch history, and also Roomba mapping the room before start cleaning, or heart alert from your smartwatch, and autocorrection for misspelled text. Okay, I can see people are starting to very interesting. I can see the result. So most people think that Google Photo auto tagging people in photos is AI, which is absolutely correct. Okay, I see that people who already started can, yeah. Okay, Grace. I think we can end the poll now. And the answer to this question is that it is all AI, actually. And because they all simulate human intelligence and problem-solving skills, for example, here we use pattern recognition to look at your heart rate. The doctor would do something the same. Roomba mapping the room before cleaning is also using computer vision. This is also part of AI system. And next, which is the key what we're talking about today, which is also like suddenly why there is so much attention on this technology, is that because of generative AI. And generative AI is a type of AI that generate new data that are similar to its training data. So most of them are, as of today, are trained on text data because documentation is the most important information source that we have. And on the right side, we can see an example from OpenAI ChatGPT. So here I have the user input, which is called prompt. And so I say, can you write a haiku about peace? And on the left, we have the AI generated output. And so it's rather straightforward. And on the third layer, we get to a bit more specific. We have the large language model, which is the foundation for most of the generative AI application for the reason that I just said. We communicate with text, documentation, books, novels. These are very important sources for information. But beyond that, we can also use text to video or to generate video, or text to generate image, or text to generate graphics, because the training data is not only limited to text. And so that creates a very interesting dynamic, which means that generative AI based on a large language model can create very diverse output. And so we can we can create text to text, text to video, but also the other way around. And we will now dive in a little bit deeper. So first, text to text. I would like to believe that today we mostly all already have experience with this. And what it can do right now, it can generate content. So all the documents, emails, program outlines, presentation content, or transform your writing for specific audiences or specific format or style, or translate into the text into different languages. You can also analyze the specific text data and create summarization, or you can use it to provide feedback for your own work. And I would say the usability from my perspective at this moment is very, very high. And some of the tool examples we can see here are Copilot, Cloud, ChatGPT, etc. And we have more reviewed tools in our takeaway resources later that you will see. And for that, because this is quite a common capability, I will not actually do a demonstration because later we will see a lot of them. And the second capability, so text to image, what it can do right now. So you can analyze images. For example, we can auto-label photos when we say Google auto-tagging photos, and create image description for accessibility. And this is pretty usable at this moment. And it can also recognize texts inside of an image. This is also something has existed for a very long time, but now just got much, much better. So this usability is also very high. And we still have the same set of tools because they integrated many of these abilities. And let's look at an example. So here on the side, we have a photo from a protest, but we don't know which protest it is, and I would like to know that. And one thing we can tell is that we're looking at more, so there's some English, there's some other, looks like could be German, and people are wearing masks, and it's winter, so it's probably COVID, etc. And we want to use the two abilities, so we want to analyze the image and recognize the text inside of the image. And so here I wrote, there's a photo from a climate protest, analyze the photo to help me understand the potential context, which city, time period, purpose, etc., and outputs the potential context in the table. And so it started thinking, and here I hypothesized a few locations all in Switzerland because of the visual and linguistic clues in the photo. So it gives you the reasoning, etc. And likely time period because it also has some knowledge about what happened, what protest had happened. And here the recommended one, it says that likely time period would be October 2021. And during the COVID era, part of Fridays for Future. And here we look back at the source where I found this, and this is exactly from the October 22nd, 2021. And this was indeed from the protest in Switzerland. And so it is very, personally, I think this is very incredible because it is rather accurate. I wouldn't have a clue out of this. And now it also comes to the area where we can generate images, for example, creating campaign visuals, posters, graphics for documents, etc. And here I would say the usability is medium because it depends. And there are some also example tools that later you can discover. And for instance, here, I'm sorry, also, yeah, thank you for muting yourself at this moment. And so, for example, here I used Sora to create a campaign visual for a WWF donors limited sneaker. I think it looks pretty cool. I would like to have it, but I don't think a WWF would ever create this. But it looks quite good, clean, and with good result. But on the other hand, when we, for example, want to create a complete infographics from scratch, if we just look at this survey results on podcasts for human rights, it seems all right. But then when we look a bit more in detail, we see that this does not match at all. And then here we start to have losing some information and data. And so the result is a bit unstable. And next, let's look at text to audio and vice versa, what this can do now. And we can transcribe audio, and this is very common. We see this in Teams, in Zoom, so different meeting recordings, and the usability is high. There are some new tools that basically using this transcription to automatically create meeting notes, and later we can actually break this down and to try to DIY this different tools for creating meeting notes. And there are also cases where we can do real-time voice translation. For example, right now, I'm using, I hope you can see the bottom, that I'm using PowerPoints to do direct translation into German. And if you are interested in how this is done, I can just show you real quick. So when you go to slideshow, you go to subtitle setting, and you would look at different here and also the subtitles. So right now it's German, but maybe we want it to be in French. And I say always use subtitles and continue to play from here. And then we will start to have French subtitle. But the issue is if you're having a meeting and people speak quite fast, it is not always very reliable. But there are also some tools like Deepo or Kudo that may give you better result. Okay, I will turn this off for now. And lastly, now we can also once again generate different audios, create voiceover, background music, or sound effects. And this is a quite interesting capability. Some example tools are also part of the resource menu. And I would like to do a little demonstration. Please let me know if you can hear this.
Hi, this is Gabriel. I like using
Okay, does not work very well like this, I guess.
AI voiceover for making videos for 3 reasons. 1, I'm very forgetful, but AI will follow the script perfectly. 2. We tend to say many filler words like but AI does not. 3. I can use many voices and choose the one that fits the message the best.
Yeah. So basically, I just had my scripts here and I used this grandpa voice, which I really like. And for the 3 reasons that AI will always follow the script and it does not say or things like this. Sometimes it takes me 10 times to record a video and it's a little bit frustrating, and I can always change to different voices. Another example is me speaking German. For the record, I don't speak any German. I wish I do. But here it creates a real-time or automatic dubbing.
Hey, ich denke, du machst einen großartigen Job im heutigen Workshop. Ich hoffe, du findest es interessant und zögere nicht, uns Feedback zu geben. Wir würden das sehr schätzen.
I like the fact that it keeps my own voice, but in the same time, like, it looks quite natural that I am speaking German. And so, which is quite interesting. The next capability is text to video, which we already saw a little bit. So create short video clips with simple motion. Some of the example I believe that we have already seen online, such as this. And you would say it's quite incredible at this moment, but to create something more specific, it does still take significant time. And to generate clone video avatar, like the one that I just did, which is also possible. And now this is actually quite usable, but there are also, of course, moral or ethical downside that people could use this for the wrong reason, and which is some topic that we will discuss in our next workshop focusing on risks. So some example tools here is also listed. And next, we have text to code. And this is very interesting, at least for me. So writing code in any programming languages, this is something that all programmers dream that we could do. It could also debug and create proof of concept application in a very short amount of time. And I would say the usability is surprisingly high at this moment. And secondly, with this capability, it can also analyze data, but it also depends on how we use the tool. So if we're analyzing well-formatted data, it works pretty well in Excel, CSV, and especially if you know exactly what you're asking for. But it will be less effective if we just copy and paste a huge article with some data points inside. And so it's still the median because it depends. And once again, these tools, because code fundamentally are still text, are once again very effective using these tools. And then there are some more capabilities. For example, generating presentation. And this is one of the most requested use case tools such as Gamma, Microsoft Copilot, and Gemini for making slides. The usability at this moment is still not super good. You can't just click and generate the presentation, even though I wish that I made this presentation with that today, but not. But we still can use this very well. For example, brainstorming and drafting the presentation content and structure and doing research. And lastly, we'll come to the web-based research. And this is something that I use on a daily basis because I need to find a lot of different sources with good summary and good credible citation. And here, I believe the usability is pretty high. And right now, Google have the AI overview that you somehow cannot really turn off, but Perplexity is a very good tool. Later, we will also see a bit more demonstration. And so a bit of key takeaways here. Large language model is the foundation and powers many generative AI-based applications. And so all these capabilities we just saw sort of like build upon this understanding of text, and different mediums can be transformed into each other and generate something new. And secondly, many of these capabilities can be combined for more complex workflow, and chat-based. So the text-to-text capability at this moment has the highest usability, and I believe it can fulfill most of our use cases within our workflow. And this is what we will dive in a little bit deeper in the next 2 sections. And so far, I would like to know if there's any questions, things that you would like to share from your understanding.
I will just say to open the question section, I can start with a question from the chat, but as well, if you have a question to say out loud, you can feel free to unmute yourself in this time. I have two questions, and I'll come to you, Andreas. First is from Richard, who asks about, as a self-employed language teacher, I'd like to reach out to more learners across Europe. How might AI help?
Sorry, can you repeat a little again?
Yes. My question is related to being a self-employed language teacher. How could we use AI to help in those situations?
Okay, so I think, so here let's do a little breakdown. I think this is actually a quite complex thing. It's about like your whole workflow, but we can, let's say, simply break it into two parts. On one hand, like being self-employed, there's always self-promotion and marketing that you need to do on different platforms. And so AI can help with that or assist with this purpose, drafting different marketing materials or promoting yourself. Or finding sources or drafting up plans for you. And also on the other hand, like for teachers, I know that teachers need to prepare a lot of materials. I don't think that you should directly generate the materials that you want to use for your teaching. I think you're a very responsible person. That's why you're here. But what you can do is to, for example, using the research tool to find good sources for the materials that you need to build on, and then brainstorm different ideas or come up with different teaching plan. And so I think that these are the potential ways that you can use AI for yourself. But of course, if you see that there are more capabilities that you think is interesting, of course, I think you should explore more. Yes.
And before we come to Andreas, just a quick question that was, why is it called large language model?
Because it's, I would say it's quite straightforward, because the size it has billions and sometimes even trillions of parameters. So like think of, we have neurons in our brain, and this is also like a neural system in which it has many different, let's say, like artificial neurons. And so it's large. And language, because it is built upon text, and model is just like when we talk about machine learning, there we often refer to different models. Yeah, I think this is like rather straightforward to the answer that I can give.
Andreas, you can share with us?
Just kudos. Thanks a lot, Gabriel, Julia, others. For this, I participated in one of the earlier trainings that you had, and I was wondering, should I participate in this one? Because maybe I heard it all. But it was really very useful, just the way you lay it out that way. It's the first time I've seen it, and I've done a number of different kinds of trainings. So real thanks for that. I guess my question is just, can we get the notes for this? I assume yes, that would be great, because what is especially useful, because I don't always know which of the apps or the whatever you call them, the AI products are relevant for which, and I just haven't had the time to kind of try them out. So it would be just to have a sense of where to start would be already really helpful. So thanks.
I was a little bit nervous seeing, because you have WWF logo behind you, and I just made a fake product of you guys. I hope you like the poster.
I've already sold the first product. Bernhard ordered it in orange.
All right, great. Yes, we will be able to share with that. And actually, like Grace, if you can, we can, I guess, already share the takeaway resources in the chat. Like I created this table with brief review and links on different tools. And I fully understand, because it is very overwhelming at this moment. There's new products popping up every other day, and we don't have time to really test everything out. I sometimes, like on Sunday, have 6-hour testing sprints with my friend, and that is like quite exhausting. So I'm happy that I can do this work so that you don't have to.
Well, thanks.
Okay. And while Grace already shared the resources in the chat, and thank you for the question, I will continue with the slides. And now we're moving on to the prompting best practices, for the reason that we already said that chat-based text-to-text capability has the highest usability, and I believe can fulfill most of our use cases. And also for the fact that it is called large language model. And so prompting means writing your message in the message box, and it is very important. But why? Why it matters so much? And so first, we have the large language model black box, very complex, firing different parameters or artificial neurons. And we have the human input. So human prompt is exactly what you write in the message box. But often there also comes with a system prompt. And this is what the programmers add for the system to let the LLM know why we're here and whose product is this. And then so you put the input into this large language model, and then it will give you the output as the response. And it is important because the quality of your input is basically one of the only things, if we're using something off the shelf, that you can actively decide or influence the quality of your output. And so, because this is the only thing we can influence, we should really spend some time to make it good. And also prompting is, to me, it's the new programming language. And we can basically talk to supercomputers or super algorithms in our own languages. And so here's an example. So before I have to write this Python code to create data visualization for the global deaths from HIV/AIDS from 2014 to 2023. And right now, I can just simply plug in the data and I just use the data in this table to create a histogram. And so that is just plain English. And we get the exact same result because the large language model or the AI right now knows how to write code. And so instead of the extra step, like now it can just do this for me. And so once again, to illustrate why prompting is important, so good communication matters for AI, but also for Hemingway. And say that due to some medical reason, Hemingway is our copywriter for a day. And we want Hemingway to write onboarding document for the new volunteers. And if I just say, hey man, can you write onboarding document for the new volunteers? He can probably write something, but is it relevant to me? Is it about my organization? Does it have all the important things? I don't know if he's gonna write short novels. And so to be more specific, I said you're a technical writer, an environmental communication specialist. And I also talk a little bit about the association Green Earth Advocates and who we are, and what exactly I want as a volunteer onboarding document, and introduce all these core things that I think is important, and the output should be structured in Markdown with headings, bullet lists, and formal yet accessible tone. And so this, once again, is a little bit from review from like our previous AI crash course. We have the 6 building blocks for prompt writing, and we have the role. So here we say Hemingway is a technical writer and the communication specialist. In the context, we also talk a little bit about who we are. And we define the tasks and audience, so to our volunteers, and the exact scope and output format. And this time I would also like you to look at this exercise. Grace, please help launch in Zoom, and I want you to help identify which sentence belong to or is which building block. And so that we can validate a little bit our understanding from the previous workshop and what we just talked about here. Some people already completed. We're doing real good. Okay. I think you do see the correct answer afterwards. And so, yeah, let's move on from here. I could see that the result answer or a little bit different. So we can dive into this a little bit deeper. And so first, we're setting up a role, right? We say that you are the data analyst specializing in nonprofit impact reporting. Our NGO recently completed a digital literacy program for rural schools. This is context, but to be honest, the nonprofit impact reporting is also a little bit context. But here we have the first two building block. And the task is to use this data set for program metrics to generate insights. And for board members, these are the audiences. And focus on summarizing key achievements, trends, and quantitative result. This is the scope. But to be honest, sometimes when we are writing this kind of prompt, it's very common that the task, audience, and scope are sort of like connected together. And so we don't have to worry about this if you didn't get these three very correct. And lastly, output format, provide an output as a 400 to 500 words report with data visualization. And so we're being very specific with what we want. And also sometimes people say, like, when we're typing or like prompting, we say, can you write a brief report? And in this kind of thing, like if you use very vague language, like brief, concise, it doesn't work so well. If you want to have, for example, for a LinkedIn post, it understands that it should be 100 to 200 words. The more precise you are, the better or well formatted the output will become. And additionally, so it's not always necessary to have every building blocks for the prompt that you're writing. Sometimes like a few sentences already can help us to achieve the goal. Then I would suggest that we don't spend crazy amount of time to write all 6 building blocks, but knowing them that they are there. And if you are not getting the ideal result, review and think about what could I add into my input to make it better. And so this is for that purpose. And we also have 3 little tips for using generative AI at this moment. And the first thing is actually a bit more about safety. So we want to learn to anonymize our data. And I'm pretty sure if you have GDPR officer in your organization, they will agree. And we should ensure data privacy by remove sensitive information such as personal address, their names, financial data, but this depends if it's like the public data or not. And so for that, we can also look at the second quiz or the next quiz and this example, and to understand what information do we need to anonymize before we send this text to AI, because we don't want the AI platforms to use that sensitive information for AI training, but also sometimes it is GDPR not compliant, etc. Yeah, I can see that people are completing very fast. I believe that we are all very aware. Okay, I think 2 more seconds, we can close this poll. And very well done. So the answer is yes. This girl with her name, she's 13 years old, and then within this data, we also know where she is going to the Baoku Central Junior High School. And so this is quite a lot of information about potential our beneficiaries, and that is something that we do not really want to present within the prompt that we share with the AI platform. Okay, and so the second tip is that, and sometimes we can see that the prompt can be a bit long. It takes some time and some thoughts to write. And if you have a good prompt, I would recommend you save it somewhere so that you can start templating. So these are the reusable prompts for tasks that you do often or repetitively. For example, creating a consistent style of writing or visual style. And we have an example from Pentagram Design. And so here it wants to create a pictogram of anything that we can insert here. And it defined the style, so bold and abstract, with some color palette. And it has very specific visual design element to it. I think this is a very interesting example because personally, I could not really write text like this because I'm not a design expert. I don't have the language to detailedly describe these things. But here we have a template and we can just simply use it.
Gabriel, sorry, I have a question from Ula.
Yes.
No? Okay, never mind. Continue.
Oh, okay. But is there any like things that you would like me to right now to just like create? So we have one poll answer. You can also write it in chat what subject do you want me to create using this template. Is there anything, Grace?
I'm not sure I can see the result here.
Okay.
If you answered, maybe you can unmute yourself and let us know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So my screen sharing is paused. I will need to screen share my desktop. Sure. Okay, do you see what I see right now on Canva?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here maybe I will just write jellyfish. And so here, previously we used the same prompt to create it quite a few different things. And here we have the pictogram of jellyfish. And you can see that the style is quite consistent. And also here is what we previously created using the same style or the same prompt. And we created butterfly, ambulance, water element, and a balancing scale. And so using the same tool and the same prompt, we're getting very consistent results that can be reused in different, say that's internal communication or visualization of different things. And that is quite helpful. And the last tip is use examples as instructions. And so this is a very effective thing when you need to classify different things. It saves a lot of time from explaining or writing specific prompt instruction on what exactly it is that you want to achieve. So basically also like when you're teaching someone, you want to show them how it is done instead of like giving them like a detailed breakdown. And this is the same. And I would wait a second for the quiz, Grace. And I would like to first share this example. So here I have the example. I have some comments or feedback for a nonprofit organization. And here I want to understand how the program is doing. And so I want to categorize these feedback into different tones. Are they negative, positive, or neutral, or etc.? And so here it says, I reached out for assistance multiple times, never received a response, very disappointing experience. I just read negative. Their disaster relief efforts were swift and incredibly well organized. We're so grateful, and this is something positive. And I just write output in a table. I didn't explain what exactly I'm trying to do, but I show it with example. And so I copy and pasted the prompt here. And also I copy and pasted all the feedback that I could gather from social media, because sometimes social media monitoring is actually quite difficult, especially on platforms like LinkedIn or other places, you can't really, like, it's against their usage policy. And so here, it quickly categorized different things into a negative, positive, and I think there's also some mixed result. But this is not exactly what I want, because I still need to spend a lot of time reading. But after I validate everything, I can say create a pie chart to visualize the result. And then once again, we will have a sort of sentiment distribution of the NGO feedback, and we have some mixed result, negative and positive result. And so this is quickly helping us to analyze, for example, our program impact, and without actually writing any instruction for this classifying task. And Grace, can you help share the quiz in Zoom, please? Okay, then I guess we can conclude this poll. Yeah, so in this use case, once again, we're looking at classifying, so categorizing program volunteer skills into different categories. And this is quite effective. If we just have skills laid out, and here I write language fluency, and then like using similar format, can also do it very effectively. Not to say that other tasks cannot use this, but in this context, yes, because drafting onboarding documents for new colleagues, this relies a little bit more content generation and processing text and photos of hand-filled application forms. This is using more, text to image capabilities that we previously talked about, and create voiceover. This is going to be more so text to audio and vice versa. Okay, and so there's a little bonus round in case you want to explore more. So on this side, we have a prompt engineering guide. This is actually, sometimes it can get very technical, gets at this moment a bit like programming, basically. So if you want to know more, here's the site. And also, on the other hand, we have the prompt marketplace. And because sometimes, for example, they sell prompt templates, and it can generate very consistent style of writing or images. And if we feel like I just don't have the time to write a crazy prompt for this, and I see something that's very effective and I would just like to use that, this is some place that you can explore. And all of this is in our resource menu in the takeaway resource that Grace already shared with you in chat. And any questions regarding the section that we just talked about, or anything you would like to share or your experience?
I do have a question from just the beginning of this section from Lena related to something a bit not on prompting. It's about how risky is it to rely on AI or LLM when blackouts in Spain might happen? Seems like we might have to save all what AI or LLMs do on our own external hards.
Sorry, what's the last sentence?
It seems that we have to save it on our own, the information from AI.
I mean, when you have a very unprecedented national blackout, this is something that I think because the internet was not working, nothing was working, your induction stove is not working, so AI is also not working. Unless you have a device that is, so to say that I have my computer and I have the equipment to run this large language model locally on my computer, and it doesn't need internet, which is also doable, but it has specific requirements for your hardware. Otherwise, I think like we still can use human intelligence in a national blackout, but interesting question. I hope that answered your question. If not, you can also let me know. Or more questions related to prompting. Lena said that help with promo, that would be super helpful actually. This is a kind of opportunity that we really would like to have. Thank you very much for offering this. So nice.
Andreas? Yeah.
Yeah, just about the prompting. I mean, this is text-based. Do you use audio-based prompting?
Yes, I do that quite often actually. Sometimes I wake up and I have questions popping up in my head. I use audio.
And is there works the same, or is there anything that you'd do differently?
I would say quite similar, and I think like it is more intuitive in the sense that it's about the kind of tasks that I want to complete, and it's also more interactive. And sometimes I want to prepare something, I have thoughts in my head, but I find it difficult to articulate or be super precise about exactly what I want to achieve. I would use like audio input, sort of like have a conversation and in this process refine my thoughts. And so I think that is a very good use. And thank you for this very excellent question.
I ask one other question.
Mhm.
I was using, so it's not on prompt. Well, it is on prompts. So I was trying to develop a communication strategy using ChatGPT, and was taking it step by step, having it do analysis on whatever target audiences and stuff like that. And it said, now generate this, now generate this. And it was doing it all very nicely.
Mhm.
But then as I was going further down, it wasn't saving what we had already produced.
Yeah.
It said, well, I haven't saved it because I don't want to keep on repeating. I don't know, I can't remember what the prompt was basically, but I understood that it's in the final document. But either I never found the final document because I'm an idiot, and then I said, well, I can't find it. Tell me where it is.
Mhm.
And then it seemed like it was hallucinating at that point because we lost half the document. And I thought, okay, maybe it's because I was using the free version. And I got the paid version for ChatGPT, and it still didn't work.
Mhm.
So
To find the document?
I never found it.
Okay. I would quickly share my screen just to, because you said you were using ChatGPT, and so for this, when you click on this, so slash, or you can also click on tools, and you can find basically this thing called Canva. And then when you turn on Canvas, I said write a communication strategy for WWF, and it would start generating, but then like you will have this documents
Right.
you can always refer to. So basically, this is one way to do it. Unless otherwise, like it would be a bit manual, you would go through and then you would save it. But so in this way, you can like make sure that you have a persistent.
That far I got. So I was on Canvas, but it was losing it on Canvas.
You were losing it on Canvas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Then I guess like there's also a bit of a version issue.
Okay.
I'm trying to think like how you can. Oh, now it says fail to generate.
I was just wondering, is the problem with my head or is the problem with ChatGPT?
I would say actually sometimes like these tools are still not like super stable. For example, here it just failed to generate, and we can also just like try to regenerate it. But there will be chances that things fail, and this is part of the risk of using AI tools also, because there are also, like you previously said, there are hallucination, and these are the risks that I think we should also dive in a little bit deeper with our next workshop, because like still it can do a lot of work, but just like humans, they also make mistakes. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I also have moments where I didn't save my PowerPoints and things just get lost.
And so, just on this case, I mean, would you suggest then saving that work into a separate, I don't know, Word document, for example, using the Word document next to the Chat GPT, use the
Yeah,
GPT to generate things and then save it, copy it
for
over?
sure. Because one of the things that, for example, working with Canva is that it always assumes that it will update the content within Canvas.
Okay.
And then sometimes I think it's already good enough in this section. I don't want it to update, but it will still sort of update it. Then
Right.
I use Notion. So I use Notion to save it all the time.
Okay, good, thanks.
Flavia, you have a question or comment?
Yes.
No? You're muted still, I think.
Okay, now and there I go. What kind of I don't know, best practices can we have also in terms of limiting or using or used to with the ChatGPT or another AI, knowing that we work for NGOs that often want to be more I don't know, aware of the impact it has on, in terms of energy consumption. So how do we use it in a reasonable way to save time, obviously, because we need to save time, and but at the same time, I don't know. There is a question on how do we make it a reasonable use, not to exaggerate, and because in the end, I'm not directly working with climate issues, but I understand that the ones there are, it can create a sort of yeah, I don't know, a question of where is the limit on where is smart enough to use this and save time,
Yeah.
while at the same time it's creating a lot of energy consumption.
Yeah, I think that is a super valid question. And thank you once again for asking this question. I think there are three levels to what we can do about this. The first level is like more hands-on, how we use this. So of course, if we are writing, for example, like we're writing better prompts, we write one prompt, we're getting like ideal results, then we don't have to write many, many times. And so then the better we can get this right, and the more we know how to use it, the easier it will become. Or like we're reducing the waste, basically. And so this is something that's also like why I think like it's important for people to know and understand how to use it well. Also like for NGOs. And a second layer, I think I would believe that it is like the responsibility for developers and researchers, and especially like AI companies, because like I said, like or previously when people ask why is it called large language model, because it has a lot of neurons, and the more the parameters or neurons, artificial neurons there are, the more energy it will consume within this process. So for example, the latest GPT 4.5 is the largest model we have ever seen. It will consume a lot more energy in comparison to if something, because there are different categories. There are trillion neurons in some model, and there are also, for example, models with 7 billion, and that is a very small model. And we need to select, for example, when we're building a product, we need to really try to find the good point of energy consumption. Or so like sometimes like a simple question can already be like answered or solved by smaller model, then why are we using something like GPT 4.5? It doesn't make sense. And this also comes to pricing. So like this will be reflected in the pricing that you see like within how AI companies like price their model. Normally the cheaper ones is less performative, but it also consume less energy. So this is a bit of a trade-off that we should actually be aware, and you're very correct. And lastly, I think it is also very important that nonprofit or civil society organization to advocate about this very important point. For example, tomorrow is the deadline for the public consultation of the EU AI office. and they're gathering public concerns or comments related to the AI Act. And if, for example, people who are attending this workshop today are interested in this or have this kind of concern or questions, I can share the link like in our email afterwards. That's you can also like write this to the EU or policy level, and I think that is also very important. And so this is my take on this. And also I see you from Singa. Before I was I know some people from Singa Lyon, and it was very nice. So yeah, good to meet you.
Thank you so much. It's very valuable to understand much better how these new technologies work. And I know that there is some people can be afraid of using it. I
Yeah.
am pro using it, but with knowing exactly much
Exactly.
better how to reduce our impact, because actually we NGOs were always under capacity. So this is a great tool. And I use it quite often, ChatGPT, but I want to use it in a smart way. And yeah,
That's very true.
thank you.
And thank you for raising this awareness. And more questions? I think we can do 3 more minutes, so maybe one more question.
Yes, I have a question from Bernhard in the chat. Let me find about extracting information from handwritten like documents or pictures. And it says I try again and again, but LLM just invents something else until I get annoyed. Is there something I'm doing wrong? Any tips, I guess, about handwritten?
Yeah, I think I think he also has different points, right? Like first, it depends on the quality of your handwriting, like because I've tested this myself also. Grace has great like writes great handwritten notes, very readable also for humans too. Mine, on the other hand, very not good. Sometimes I misinterpret things. But I also want to say that like there's also another possibility is and also like cursive, basically sometimes it's very difficult. But another thing is that because we talk about large language model and how they're trained on texts, and not all texts are equal. It is predominantly like most of these language models are predominantly trained on English texts. And then like like probably like 80 or 90% of English text, and then like some percentage of German, French, Spanish, Mandarin, and then like gradually like to smaller language varieties. And in this process, you could really see this difference in quality. That in English, it's very good at interpreting and generating output, but in some other languages, sometimes it just doesn't make sense grammarly, or like it doesn't understand the nuance of the specific language. So I would say it really depends. I think like I would encourage everybody to do some testing to figure this out. Yeah, because I don't know all the languages. It's difficult for me to work this out for everybody. But yeah, that is, I think, the possibility I see. Okay. Yeah, due to the time concern, I would just continue with the next section. And so here we're getting into some more practical side, which I personally really like. So use cases that we can implement starting today in the nonprofit workflow. And so we have a few examples. First one is also highly requested, how to take meeting notes. So previously while we're going through basically different AI capabilities, we already mentioned that there are some products specifically built for this purpose. And these are the specialized tools. So on one hand, advantage, these tools are highly automated. You simply add the note taker into the meeting, and then at the end of the meeting, you stop recording, you will get a meeting note. So super convenient, but downside, additional subscriptions, you might need to pay like 20 euros a month, but you also like often only support meetings in which you can make recordings if I'm having some meeting with someone who does not want to be recorded, or if I'm having an in-person meeting, sometimes it gets a bit trickier. And so the slide we already see at the AI and its capabilities. And basically, to use AI to take meeting notes, you are based on audio transcription's capabilities. And if we break it down, then we can, it's quite simple what's happening behind these software applications. And so you have the meeting recording, which is the transcription. You can get it from Zoom, from Teams, etc. And then this will be transcribed into text transcription and then transformed into meeting notes. So with the system prompt that we previously said, these company developers said. And how we can DIY this. So we can absolutely do this by ourselves using common chat-based tools. And the good side, we don't have to subscribe to different tools. And it can also support more input formats, for example, meeting transcription, text files, or handwritten notes. And cons is less automated. You need to put in a little bit of effort, and you need to have a clear idea about what you're doing, so the AI capabilities. But luckily, we just talked about that. And so we can now look at this. And so from the input side, transcription from Teams or Zoom, you can download this and do that. Or you have short meeting notes in bullet points that you could be taking on Word document, or you take a photo of the handwritten notes, but it depends on your handwriting. I guess there's some risks involved. And then you also want to create or provide some sort of context, for example, meeting agenda. And then you will get a well-formatted meeting notes that you can share with your team. And how we can do this is, so we have an example. Right now, I have this screenshot of a meeting note. And this is about, what? Okay. So here, I said, we're an NGO for digital media literacy and use the meeting agenda and my notes to write a meeting note with action items at the end. I'm Alex, just so it knows who I am. And here we have the meeting notes. We want to talk about the program design update, beginner track, mobile first localization topics, volunteer recruitment strategy, and action items, owners, deadlines, and wrap up. And then here is my meeting notes. Does not look great. It's all posted. Not very good handwriting. But it does have the important element. It's just for reference. And so I put these things inside, and here in the end we get, so also in the canvas that I just showed, there's a date, time, location, facilitator, note taker, attendees. I also repeated and also elaborated a bit on the agenda which we just had. And it finished with an action item log with the tasks, owner, and due date for the specific thing that we discussed. And the next meeting, this is a little bit of an extra it gives me. So a proposed agenda, for example, check-in or localization progress, etc., etc. And these are just logical points, but it also just sort of give me a little bonus. And that was quite simple. So the notes in whichever format, context, and a little bit of prompt writing, and you get the meeting notes. Second use case example. So for us, we have webinar recordings in different, and then we need to produce different contents. And so, for example, we already have transcription from Teams Zoom, and then we want to create an event report. And then we also need to have social media post and a thank you email to all participants for people who attended this webinar and human rights webinar. And how could we do this? So here is the transcript. And I write with context, we're AI for NGO. This is the transcription of our open webinar about AI and human rights. Analyze the transcription and write an event report for this webinar in 400 words, very specific. And the section I want title, date, speaker, objective, highlights, and the speaker word. And so, and with that, we have basically the event report with highlights. So case study and what we discussed. Oh. Sorry, can Grace, you mute some of the participants for this moment? Thank you. And then afterwards, we need to transform this into a LinkedIn post. And once again, we set the tone to be formal yet approachable, not so salesy. Start with one-line hook, very specific request. Post should be 120 word max. Use only a few emoji and hashtag. And here then we have the LinkedIn post with a one-line hook opener. Personally, I'm not a fan of the emojis and the hashtags, but we can obviously modify those. And then since we still have, like, let's get rolling, we still have the content, the exact content. And then we want to create a thank you email to the workshop attendee and stay connected. And the email should be also like not too long. So 120 word max and blah, 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 blah. And here we have some good draft for this. And even though Barbara Weber is our co-founder also, but not the CEO, but these are the details that we can later on to fix. And so it does give you a pretty good head start. And here we have one input, and then we transform it into an output, and which is then transformed into another output and another output, and all just in a streamline, I guess. And the third use case, once again, I do a lot of research and we need to draft a lot of report, I believe, and we also need to do data analysis and visualization. And so in this use case, we will start with a research question that we have. We get, and then we get the research result with sources or citations. And then we generate data visualization for the report. And then we also transform it into text draft report. And how would this look like is that, so this is the tool called Perplexity that we talked about. My research question is, I want to find data on digital media literacy in European countries, and I want the output to be in the table. And here, very quickly, it happened probably like in 10 seconds, we have these data points. And they also give me a media literacy index and basic digital skills. And I think most importantly is that it will provide me with sources. So Publication Office, Statista, Eurostat, and these are pretty good sources, but there are more sources. And oftentimes, like I spend time to really validate if these are usable and useful sources. And from there on, I also ask about the report. So I want the text. What could be the reason for such differences? And write a 300-word report. And here you can see Perplexity, because they are most focused on research. It does not give you the best report, but it does try to find a bit more reasons and also give you relative sources. And with that, so I took a screenshot, or actually here, like I copy and pasted all the data points. And I said, create a bar chart for comparing the media literacy between different countries. And once again, it's quite easy that we have such a bar chart, and it's rather accurate. I can also prompt more to change the color, or I could also specify more to change with the color, etc., etc. And so now we also have both components, and with the previous reasoning and citation, and plus the data visualization, this seems quite complete. But once again, we should be very careful with the fact that, for example, this did not include all European countries. And you can always prompt to search more. Or if you already have specific data source in mind, you can also start from there. And use case example 4. So previously we've seen Hemingway as our copywriter, and we want to create the onboarding document for your volunteers. I will not repeat the prompt, but in this time, once again, we need to think about what are our inputs. We have the prompt. And we can also just use this as a template and copy and paste. And then there's because we said that we want to introduce our mission, vision, core values, structures, roles, code of conduct, training, communication channels, next steps. And these are already partially these things, for example, mission, vision, core values, these are already existed on our website. And then the next few things, somebody sent those to me like via email. And then we can put these together as the input, and then we transform them into the content of the onboarding document. And then in the end, we transform them into something visually enhanced or more sophisticated onboarding document. And this, we start from here. So we already have the prompt. I will not reread that. And here we have a website called For Green Earth and Protecting Local Ecosystem, One Creek, One Community at a Time. And it has the vision, mission and vision, core values, and what we do. And becoming a volunteer, donate to our cause. And just so you know, this is something that I created using AI in basically 2 minutes for this website. You can still see that it's visually very good, and I even respond when I like hover my mouse on it. But I also, for example, here we have something missing, and the image also used are maybe not the most on point. But I basically select all the text because it already has those context. And then there's somebody sent me an email saying, oh, hi Gabs, thanks for taking the lead. And then here's the topic I'd like to see covered, etc., etc. So I put the prompt. And I say you can find the context below. And this is literally everything that's shown on the website all the way up to here. And then this is the email. So these are a lot of input. And then we are getting it created, it put in the chat, and I said I would like to have it as Canva. And here, once again, we have the input, we have the mission, vision, core values, organizational structure with a simple chart, key volunteers roles, code of conduct, training and development, communication channels, next steps checklist, and some appendix and contact. But this is not done yet because I want this to look a little bit better, and I go to this tool called Gamma, and you would also find a similar thing because I also made our takeaway resources using the same tool, and I plug it in, and it automatically generates a document I can further edit, so that it doesn't look just super boring, or it looks better. But it still contained all the information that I had. And this is a quite interesting tool that I would also encourage you to try out. And okay, and here we're at our last use case, and which is the final step in the journey of a power user. And so, because I'm pretty sure we have all been here. So we start with using generative AI as search engine, and we simply ask questions like you would do with Google. So who was the first female astronaut? And this was an actual question from mine. And then Swiss Army knife. So then you start to learn how to use this like for different complex tasks. For example, extract contact data from this screenshot and output in a structured table. But then the final step is to use it as a sparring partner. And you can set different personas for AI so that you can learn from it, from its critical feedback, but you can also give AI your feedback. And so, for example, here I'm writing a proposal and I want to know if my proposal is like on point. And I said, you're a director of EU AI office and you're giving feedback on my proposal. And I can continue with this, how I want the feedback to look like, which point are we doing? Another example here would be, so once again, we are reusing the recording transcript from AI for Human Rights webinar. And I said the persona that you are the executive manager at AI for NGO. So I'm trying to think of this as Julia, and I'm forwarding you the transcripts from our webinar. And can you provide me some critical feedback on what you think we're doing well and what could be better? And I start to think, actually, it's quite a thorough thought process. And it talks about what we're doing good. I said I wanted my ChatGPT's persona to be a bit funny, and so that's why it's not writing in the most professional sense. So the strengths were credible. We found diverse lead voices, and Barbara introduced every speaker with pronouns and roles, so quite inclusive, etc. I think what's most important is what we can do better. For example, long stretches without interaction. Do we want to have more interactive webinar? Sometimes we used jargon, so maybe we should give them better definition. And also the cited use cases are mostly focusing on the Europe and the US side, like should we try to make this more representative? And so oftentimes, like when you're using AI as a sparring partner, you might not find like 10 feedback, all super useful, but as long as it's thinking about 2 or 3 things that I didn't previously think about, it's already a big improvement. And so I strongly recommend, and this is also strongly recommended or especially requested by Julia, because she used this a lot in such ways, which I think is fantastic. And closing on this, so we already see that you can do so many complex things or tasks in your workflow, but you should always remember that they are your teammate and you are the director, and which means that you have a lot of responsibilities. And your responsibility comes at 2 different time points. So before your input, you should be able to define your goals and provide context. And this is done with the correct prompting, and also guide new teammates on the tasks to be completed. Once again, prompting, think about the building blocks, think about what exactly you're trying to do, think about what capabilities of AI that we're trying to use right now. And then you have the responsibility after its output, which is also very important. You have the responsibility to review and refine the output of AI, and you need to make the decisions on what is correct and not, because once again, like we said, there are hallucinations, but also because just like humans and just like AIs, we all make mistakes, and so you have to ensure alignment and you have to make that decisions. And these are your core responsibility when using AI. And so the key takeaways from this section, we know that AI is extremely versatile and it can be applied very flexibly in many scenarios at our work, but also like personal life. And have a clear understanding of AI's capabilities will really allow us to apply it in our workflow creatively. So this is why it's very important what we just talked about in the first section. And lastly, about our responsibility. So they give you a head start, but only you can make the decisions and deliver the final output with your judgment. Yeah, and this will be our last QA round before we conclude today's learning. And if you have any questions also related to the previous sections, feel free to let us know.
I'll just start the discussion with the 2 questions from Bianca. The first is about asking ChatGPT about the same topic in different stages, and ChatGPT answering that it doesn't have access to previous conversation. They said it's time consuming to not be able to continue the conversation. Is it true only in the free version that it deletes history or doesn't make available previous conversations?
I mean, to this question, I think there are many different scenarios where this could happen. So if you are, for example, once again, I will just share my screen real quick. So I don't, okay, say that I go to Mistral. And here, for example, we have different topics or conversations that we previously had. And it will not know what, like one conversation from another, for instance. But what we can do is to, let's say, so if you have like one chat and you want to continue the conversation, if it is not outrageously long, you normally will be able to do it. But still, there is something called context window. And this context window is different for different companies' AI models. For example, Cloud's AI model has a very long context window, so it can remember a lot of things. This is quite comparable to our working memory. For example, if I need to cook and I need to remember 5 different phone numbers and I need to answer your questions, I will not be able to handle one of them. Or if we're talking about something for several hours, it's difficult for me to remember what happened or what was the conversation's starting point. So with that, you can always like, for example, like some of the solutions that people have tried to have a consistent document of the context, or to make sure that you're constantly in the same chat. But also now like different AI tools or some AI tools enable this thing called memory. So it's a bit of like a long-term memory covering all the topics that you have previously talked about. So it really gives you a bit of like assistant kind of feel. So you can enable this memory so that it has more or less like contact to it.
Hopefully that helps to answer some of your question, Bianca. And your second one was about how can we be confident that the feedback we receive is valid and not misleading, especially when creating an official persona from the example, like the EU representative, and when thinking of a project proposal.
And once again, I would say this really comes down to our responsibility, which is the last point that we stopped on. Because like it really takes your own judgment, your experience, and your knowledge on the specifics to these things. For example, there are also companies creating basically user testing. They create different user persona or like client or customer personas, and then like you can test a product idea, etc. You can bounce ideas with each other, getting critical feedback and covering like different topics. I think it is more of an explorative process, and I would not suggest that we just take this as the authoritative voice. Because, for example, if we're presenting a proposal to the EU AI office, I believe this is quite an important matter. Like we would, for example, with the brainstorming and to try to cover the entire topic, are we talking about legality? Are we talking about environmental impact? Are we talking about the program specifics? To get some critical feedback, but I also believe that we will talk with people who have already done this, have experience, have clear understanding to this specific task at hand, and have consultation with them. That's also for certain. And so I think this is one of the tools or tasks that we can do, but awareness is very important.
Great, thank you. And I will just combine maybe a few of these questions since we're almost out of time, but there's some questions about recommendations for tools, paying for tools, how do you choose an AI tool for the purpose, and maybe Gabriel can direct people to how they could maybe learn more about this.
Yes, and once again, I will share my screen for the last bit. So here we have the takeaway resources for today's workshop. You can directly go to our website also, and you can also click here, give us some feedback for our survey. Here I wrote, basically I combined some of the tools that I've personally tested, and I give them a pretty subjective usability rating and my comment. And this covers quite a diverse range of tools and with direct link to their website, which I suggest if you want, you can look at the comment usability rating and give them a try. I personally only pay for very few tools because knowing that a lot of things can be done with very like general purpose tool like ChatGPT or Cloud or Copilot. Also, there's a section in case you want to learn more about prompting. So here about prompt engineering guide, and this is the marketplace prompt base where you can buy prompts. And for more discovery, there's a website called There's an AI for That. And this is literally about if you're thinking about something, oh, you're like, can AI do this? You should go to the website, there's an AI for that, and to see if there is actually an AI for that and how. And the people also give them honest review on this. And so I think it is a good source for you to continue to explore. Yeah, and there's also our contact. If you have any questions, so after today's workshop, you can always write to us via email or connect with us on LinkedIn. And that's all very welcome. Yeah. So,
Great.
and now we're at 6:30. Yes, anything Julia would like to also touch on in the end?
I want just to say thank you. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Grace. And thank you for everybody for this really great session. For the first time make this specific workshop. It's our first try, and we're still looking for interesting use cases. Maybe as a feedback which you give us, you can also outline some use cases you would like to discover and give us some just a good hit, what would be helpful for you in your work. And we will try to dive deeper and to find some interesting tools which you can use for this, or kind of interesting prompts which you can suggest to use it for your library.
Yeah.
And I thought about maybe just shortly to also respond to Bianca for her questions, because when as Gabriel said, I like feedback from AI. And for this reason, I sometimes feed AI with some information. For example, if it's about some proposal, I can already submit requirements. I can submit some project which already been before funded by this organization. All what I know, what would be useful for the AI, just to understand the logic behind the selection or requirements of this specific organization or donor. And I think sometimes it works well. And of course, not all makes sense, but sometimes it just gives me a hint to think about from different point of view. And it's better than to have just a monologue. It looks a bit like dialogue, and I found it's very helpful. Also, stimulate our way of thinking, because it's a different way of thinking in cooperation with AI. So, thank you, and we will continue our workshops. Just maybe a bit announce of the next plans. So first in June, we are going to make a webinar. It would be in different, not a workshop, but webinar on topic AI Act and data protection. And we invite very excellent experts. He's a lawyer and one of the greatest lawyer in Austrian technical law, digital law, and working in McKinsey. And I believe it's not often we have a chance directly ask question of McKinsey partner on specific how AI works today in this kind of slippery field of data protection and international law. And then on a kind of like a follow-up of this webinar, we are going to present our own workshop on data protection, maybe on more practical level, how to implement it in our organization we're working in, and what is the most important keystones on this path. And as I just started from, we also now intensively working on creating online courses, which would be like self-learning paths for everyone on AI, on ethical question, on opportunities, on risk. And I hope as soon as it's ready, we would be happy to send you information. And if you can share it with your colleagues, and more people would be engaged in this kind of knowledge learning center, we would be happy to have you on board. So maybe that's all from my side. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I also see that Flavia showed some resources in the group chat, and that's also very appreciative. Unless you have more questions at this moment or other comments, well then, thank you for today. Yeah.
Big thanks.
Yes. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Cool.
And
Excellent.
Okay,
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.
bye.